All right, let's jump back into Genesis. Last time, we saw humanity just totally spin out of control, ending with everyone scattered from Babylon. Today, we're tackling the second half of the book, where the camera zooms way in, from the chaos of the whole world to the drama of just one family and a single promise that is going to change, well, everything. So just to recap where we left off at the end of Genesis chapter 11, the world is a mess. Humanity's big, arrogant project at Babylon has completely backfired. People are scattered all over the place, they can't understand each other, and everything is just confused. The good world God made is totally fractured. So this begs the huge question that really drives the rest of the entire biblical story. The world is broken, so what is God going to do? How is he possibly going to rescue his creation and put all these shattered pieces back together? The answer to that question is exactly what the rest of Genesis is all about. Now, you might be thinking, God's going to do something huge, right? Some big, flashy, global event. But his plan is, well, it's way more surprising and a lot more personal than that. Out of all those scattered, confused families from Babylon, the story suddenly zooms in on just one. Yep, God's massive plan to rescue all of humanity kicks off with this one guy from an ancient city named Abram. We'll later know him as Abraham. God calls him out of nowhere and tells him to leave everything he's ever known. And he makes him a promise that through his family, a rescue mission for the entire world is about to begin. Okay, so you really got to lean in here because this promise is the key to everything that happens from this point on. It's a 3-part deal. First, God says he'll make Abraham into a great nation, with more descendants than stars in the sky. Second, God will make his name great. Now, remember Babylon? The whole point of that tower was for people to make a name for themselves, and it was a total disaster. This is God's direct response to that failure. And third, and this is the big one, God will bless Abraham so that through him, every single family on earth can find God's blessing. So as the rest of the book follows Abraham's family, his son Isaac, his grandson Jacob, and then Jacob's 12 sons, you start to see this really clear pattern emerge. And honestly, it is probably not what you'd expect from the heroes of the story. This right here, this is the tug of war that drives the rest of the story. On one side, you have constant human failure. Generation after generation, these people lie, they deceive each other, they make just awful decisions, and they constantly put God's big promise at risk. But on the other side, you have God, who is just relentlessly faithful. He keeps bailing them out, rescuing them from their own messes, and reminding them of his promise. And that's the main takeaway here. This story is not about perfect people. It's about a God who is committed to his plan, even when the people involved are, well, a hot mess. So let's see how this actually plays out. We'll start with Abraham himself and then get to his grandson, Jacob, who is a whole other level of complicated. Just look at Abraham. God promises him this huge family. But then on 2 different occasions, he gets so scared for his own life that he passes off his wife Sarah as his sister to powerful kings. Not exactly a hero move. Then, when he and Sarah can't have kids, they get impatient and try to, help God out by using a servant girl. And that just creates a whole world of family drama. But every single time, God steps in and keeps his promise on track anyway. And then there's his grandson, Jacob. Get this, his name literally means deceiver. And boy, does he live up to it. This is the guy who cheats his own twin brother, Esau, out of his inheritance, and then goes on to trick his blind, dying father to get his blessing. He spends the first part of his life just scheming and running. But after years of this, after getting a taste of his own medicine, Jacob has this bizarre all-night wrestling match with God himself, and he just refuses to let go. This moment shows God's incredible commitment. Instead of squashing him, God honors Jacob's stubborn fight, gives him the blessing he's so desperate for, and even renames him Israel, which means one who wrestles with God. So this whole cycle, human failure, God's faithfulness, it all builds to this incredible climax in the story of Jacob's 12 sons, especially his favorite son, Joseph. The family dysfunction here is just off the charts. Joseph's 10 older brothers hate him so much that they literally sell him into slavery in Egypt. They throw him in a pit, he ends up in prison, his life is basically over. But God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating this insane reversal of fortune, and raises Joseph all the way up to become the second in command of all of Egypt. And it all comes to a head in this one amazing moment. Years later, Joseph finally reveals himself to the very brothers who betrayed him, and he says this, You planned this for evil, but God planned it for good to save many lives. And that one sentence, that's not just Joseph's story. That is the theme of the entire book of Genesis. Humans keep messing up, keep choosing evil, but God is so sovereign and so good that he can actually hijack that evil for his own redemptive purposes.
So as the book of Genesis wraps up, the story connects this one messy family's drama all the way back to a really mysterious promise that was made at the very beginning.
Remember way back in Genesis chapter 3? God promised that a wounded victor would come, a descendant who would finally crush the snake and defeat evil at its source. Well, Genesis makes it super clear that this world-changing promise is being carried forward through Abraham's family line.
And what's cool is that this promise gets more and more specific as we go. It starts with that vague prophecy in Genesis 3, then it narrows to Abraham's family. And finally, on his deathbed, Jacob predicts that the ultimate king, the one who's going to bring God's blessing to everyone, will come from the line of his fourth son, Judah.
And that is where the book of Genesis leaves us. Jacob's family is huge now, and they're safe in Egypt, at least for the moment. But they're not in the land God promised them. And that huge promise to bless all the families of the earth, well, that feels a long, long way from being finished. It just leaves you hanging, forced to turn the page, wondering, how in the world is God going to pull this off?